music making has been democratized and everyone can do it, but what ends up happening is that everyone does it alone in their rooms. The old way of running a studio, I thought, wasn't working anymore because people can't afford to pay those prices. I thought there must be a better way. My name is Giovanni Almonte. We're at the Thin White Duke. It's a recording studio and cocktail bar in Soho, London.
It's unique from the interior all the way into how the studio runs itself. When I first heard of it, I'd actually heard of it because my partner told me that we should go for a drink here, and then she was very quiet about there being a recording studio underneath, and then was like, oh, by the way, there's a recording studio. So I checked it out after that, and then yeah, it's such a beautiful spot to be and so inspiring to work here all the time, just from how unique it is.
I recognize that because of technology, music making has been democratized and everyone can do it, but what ends up happening is that everyone does it alone in their rooms. And I thought that was a real big problem because there's no scene, there's no roots being created. You know, when I first moved to New York City, I was born there, but when I went back to New York City as an adult, I went for the jazz, and the jazz from that area had a very specific sound, and that's what drew me. I wanted to be part of it, I wanted to be there. 10, 15 years on, you don't really get that. You don't get sounds from places. You get social media, trend of sound. So I thought that was a real big problem, and I thought the fact that people were creating music more and more by themselves, functioning more like software users rather than musicians, was a big, big problem. But I know that the old way of running a studio, I thought, wasn't working anymore because people can't afford to pay those prices by the hour. I know that I use studios like once or twice a year. You do a bunch of prep work to make sure that you use it to the fullest in the time that you had it. I thought there must be a better way, so I had the idea of a membership-based studios where you pay for access and you use it as you like, as much as you like. There are other membership-based recording studios, but they're not full service. You're pretty much left to your own devices. They give you access to a room, and then you're on your own. Where here, you have access to the studio and an engineer. It's part of the package, so that you come and you just do your work and you leave. You don't have to set up, you don't have to break down, and you don't have to know how to do everything in order to be able to do it. You shouldn't have to know how to do everything. I think that's another big problem, is that because you can, a lot of people are, and so you know, they're not just learning their instrument or just learning their craft. You're just learning a little bit of everything to be able to make a song by yourself. So our engineer is here full time. Whether you need him or not, he's here. So we looked at lots of sites. We wanted to be central. We wanted to have foot traffic. So we looked at lots of properties, and this one was Soho Radio previously. And it was just like a good fit. It's small, so it was a good way to start. We imagine having multiple sites, so it was a good way to kind of test out the concept. The bar upstairs is a floor through, and then downstairs, the space is divided into 3 rooms. 2 of them are production rooms, with the middle one being a overdub or vocal booth. So this is the smaller of the control rooms. We call it the seminary. It's our ode to the Thin White Duke. We have him behind me as Jesus, which started out as a joke, but it became a real thing. We have the Kyoto room, which is the bigger of the rooms. We call it the live room, I suppose. There the drums are located, and our guitar amps. So if people want to use the space for rehearsal, they go there usually. And then the middle room is the bridge. And because of RME, we can use it. We can share the bridge with a producer in the Kyoto room or a producer in the seminary, or it can be its own room, which vocalists tend to use it. They set up their laptop and they just take takes after take, and they don't have to move space.
Everything makes sense, and how sort of complex the studio looks, but actually how simple it is really the sort of main draw for it. And the connection between that and I think that how people are making music in a more modern way, that everybody's very much in their own world, in their own studio with their laptop. It seamlessly goes into this, and yet you get this full studio with very easily breakdownable into production rooms as well.
Because of RME, they can all be used independently, and oftentimes they are. because of the flexibility of the audio over IP. I didn't have any knowledge of RME equipment previously. I just noticed that there was a problem with the traditional studio setup, which was like, if you use it for anything, you couldn't use it for anything else. So if you were using a studio to mix, you couldn't overdub, you couldn't do anything. So I thought there's got to be a way to isolate use cases from room to room, and I found that there was audio over IP. And then when I looked at, there was two like main formats, Dante and AVB, and I know AVB was open source, so I thought that was the most democratic format, and I went with it. And I saw that RME they've taken that technology forward more than any other brand. I did know a little bit about RME, and I know that their engineering was great. And researching them when I was deciding which products we were going to use in the studios, I saw that they had a really good reputation for updating. And man, it's been the best thing. We've gotten so much support from them. They helped us set up the studio right from the beginning, which above and beyond, like that was above and beyond. No other brand would have done it, I think.
I think that the fact that you can so seamlessly change between how you can open up the whole entire studio to be one big breathing room itself and then break it straight back down with AVB is really is what's key, and how there's basically no latency when we're using things like TotalMix to run different headphone signals to people. And
the bar is also wired with RME stuff. So we can, and we have had bands split between the space. We've had rhythm section in the live room, the Kyoto room. We've had a brass section in the middle room. We've had vocalists and a guitar player upstairs and an engineer in here. And all of them are being mixed and routed through the house speakers, everything.
I think originally it was kind of thought that it would be a lot of producers like working on with singers and building tracks from start to finish. But then strangely jazz was coming in a lot, which has been really, really fun. We've had double bass in the vocal booth, having to move the whole entire room around so that they can see the kick pedal from the drummer in the other room. We're now working on what I feel is like a lot more sort of like arty projects. Songwriters that don't use any instruments, that are only using vocals and building songs from that. So it's really diverse, which is really interesting.
The house music is also routed through RME stuff. We don't use like a traditional amplifier kind of setup. We have a 1610 upstairs with an AVB tool upstairs. And that 1610 is feeding all the house speakers. We've got connected like 10 speakers or something like that. And then we have an AVB tool up there so that when we have musicians up there, we have 4 mic preamps and it's linked in. And then down here we have a 1610 in both of the production rooms, 2 Digiface AVBs and a RME tool in the bridge.
We have the RME 12 mic pre. Probably my favorite thing is how clean the preamps are in that. It really shines through on microphones. Like I think that we always sort of consider microphones to be like in combination of things. So it's always like, this is the mic that we're using with this desk and then this preamp and this conversion. This is like stripping that all back and just going, this mic is solely on its own with how clean that interface is. And it lets it really shine through and work in a more sort of, I guess, in an old school format where you're really thinking about placement of mic and just using those 2 parts there.
Yeah, the AVB stuff is incredible. I mean, like, we can link the rooms in any order. We can send mixes from here to the other room. Like, our studios end up being kind of like a social space. So, for example, we have a few producers that end up kind of making this their hangout spot, you know? So they'll start out in one room, there'll be another person over there, and then that person's session will end, and they'll just bleed into there. And then with just a few clicks, like they're sending their mixes over there as well, so they can listen, or just whatever background music they're having. We do this thing where like, if you finish a mix here, you get a cocktail, you know, so like we buy you a cocktail.
Someone's finished a mix in this room and we just seamlessly send it upstairs to then trial it on different sets of speakers that we have in more of a real world environment.
So they'll go upstairs and then we'll send their mix up. And it brings such a smile to their face to hear it. I mean, the people that are attending the bar, they don't know that it's music that was recorded downstairs, but it just makes it more special. You get that like finishing ritual That gives you a sense of a bit more accomplishment, I think. And that's not possible without AVB. That you can actually use the vocal booth on its own as a room for you to track, and you don't have to, if you're a vocalist, that's really handy. You don't have to move, you don't have to have someone in the control room, and you got the isolation that you would and the sound treatment that you would from a proper vocal booth. And you just use the AVB tool. Your laptop's there. It's kind of weird. I will say that it's a weird thing getting your head around the routing, how infinitely variable it is, and how they're not talking to each other directly. Like, here they are in a rack, but they're not connected to each other. I just kept feeling my mind go to the old way and just being like, no, I can do anything. How does it actually work? And you can route them any way you want. It's pretty odd, but other than that, it's great.
Yeah, I love it. Like, it becomes your best friend halfway through any kind of session. Anything that you sort of start to, when sessions are building up, TotalMix has got your back throughout the whole entire thing. So yeah, even if it is just separate headphone mixes to different people, or you're running a lot of processing and you need to start just quickly running things, again, with no latency on it, and just to a vocalist, and so they can hear themselves clearer. It's so simple.
The members here, I would say, like, there's one in particular, she got her head around it instantly, you know. So, I mean, people smarter than me certainly can do it with no problem.